I want to give you an update on the work cycle. This, as you may recall, is the original bike that we're working with. This was an old Worksman trike that came out of the Fairfield steel mill, and you can see that it was designed with this tray for carrying materials inside the steel mill. One of the features of this trike that is sort of a design challenge at this point is the front axle is a straight axle all the way across, and it turns on this U-bolt or U-joint. And so what happens is whenever you are traveling or turning, when you turn these handlebars here, this entire unit, the tray, the wheels, the springs, everything turns. And so when we're trying to get ultimately what we're trying to do is we're ultimately trying to create a place with a dry hood and a dry safe place, here on this tray. We want to put a covering on it. Well, if we also want to extend that covering out to the rider so that you can go out in weather and not get wet or cold weather, and maybe have a little windshield or maybe even a little heater in here. The problem is that this entire unit turns, and so that's problematic because do you extend this covering all the way back over the rider and then have the whole big thing turning? We're having to, just from a design and concept perspective, we're having to really stop and think about, what can we do without major modifications to this bike? So ultimately, this is what we were looking for, is something that would be comparable to this. And this is actually not a bike, this is an e-car, but we're looking for some kind of like covering like that with our hood up in here. And you can kind of see this dude kind of going to work in his coat there, and we want to have something that convenient. Again, this is not conceptually, this is an actual e-car because there are 4 wheels, and we have 3 to keep it in that bicycle classification. And that's the original, that's the modern version of this original bike that we're working with. So we did some original design work in SolidWorks, and this is sort of like the first version of what we started working with. And you can see the problem clearer here. If we cover this hood, and you kind of imagine the whole thing's covered, if we cover it, the turning radius is pretty tight there, because if somebody's inside here driving this thing, then as they turn this hood, it's going to bang up against the sides there. It's going to create an opportunity to pinch your hands and fingers and things there, or anything you got in there. And so, it's just sort of awkward, how that might work. And in looking at also, we did this original design sort of squared off, looking at it. We got to thinking that maybe an alternative would be if we kind of created a more rounded, connection here, and then maybe had a more rounded cabin, for the rider of the bike that came back to. So you can kind of see here, I'm trying to kind of illustrate that a little bit, and it kind of comes back to some type of connection back in the back of the bike, which might mean that we have to extend some of the frame back a little bit to have a connecting spot there, and that would be fine. Again, the problem though is, even with that, we've got this problem of this whole front unit turning. And so the idea is that maybe what we have to do is get rid of this straight axle all the way across and put more of a suspension rack and pinion type system in here, where this would become maybe solid, and then the wheels would turn without turning the entire tray. And that would give us some flexibility as it relates to this connection spot right here, because these handlebars would go away and we put in a new either handlebar or actual steering wheel, and we would steer the unit from here. Instead of the whole tray turning, we would actually have a steering wheel that would turn it there. So that certainly is an option. And then just sort of thinking that through, I was looking at what that covering might look like if we covered that whole area. That's the tray, of course. Then we come out here maybe and round it off and bring it up here, and then we'd have a separate unit here for the rider. So that gives you just a general idea of what we kind of the design and concept problem. Are we going to try to continue to work with this and something like this, or do we need to go to this rack and pinion type setup so that we can steer and still have a cover in place? So welcome your insights to that. Please share your concept ideas. Very interested in what the solutions might be to this issue. Thanks.